Welcome everybody to the Matt Le Tissier suite here at St Mary's Stadium and to this special press box feature on Southampton's official YouTube channel. I'm delighted to say that today I'm joined by three of our top local journalists who cover Southampton on a daily basis, and they're here to give us their opinions on current events at the club and also to look ahead to the new season and what we might expect from that. So to my right, I'm delighted to say we have Adam Blackmore,
Morning.
the sports editor from BBC Radio Solent. Many of you will recognise Adam from his commentaries of all of Southampton's games at home and away, alongside Dave Merrington, and also his pre- and post-match interviews on Solent. To my left, to my immediate left, we have Paul Belverstone of Premier League Productions.
Hello.
Again, any of you who watch our press conferences on YouTube will no doubt be familiar with Paul's voice. As will anybody watching this internationally, as Premier League Productions broadcast to pretty much all the countries around the world, certainly a large majority of them anyway. And last but by no means least, out there on the end is Adam Leitch, the chief sports writer of the Southern Daily Echo. Again, Adam will be very familiar to many of you guys out there. I think he's covered Southampton at home and away for, I believe, the last 14 seasons now, is that correct?
14, yeah.
So gentlemen, a wealth of experience around the table. There's obviously really only one topic that we can all start on. Not necessarily the topic we thought we'd be starting on when we were discussing doing this a few weeks ago. But of course, Southampton are searching for a new manager. Adam Blackmore, if I can come to you first, could you just give us your thoughts on Ronald Koeman's departure and what you thought of that whole situation?
Well, I guess disappointment was my overriding thought, as it would have been for a lot of supporters, because I did feel that he led us down one path and went on another. So I thought there was lots of reassurances that he was going to see his contract out. That didn't happen. So I guess surprise, then disappointment, and then a sort of, I guess for me, it's always a bit, everyone comes back to well, it's football, what do you expect? And that always makes my heart sink a bit, because I always find that very disappointing that we should have used football as an excuse for not sticking to your guns or sticking to your word, which is a shame.
I thought you wrote a brilliant editorial saying it now feels like you can't believe any manager, because he seemed to be a guy who you could trust to be a little bit loyal or a man of his word, and now you just feel let down as much as anything. Even as someone for professionally, it's sort of, you know, take the emotion out of it. It's quite interesting having your new manager come in, and there's all the stuff that goes with it. It makes it easier to do sort of pre-match reports or in the week and all that sort of thing. But you know, we're all football fans and so feel let down.
Yeah, I think just following on from what Belver said there about the piece that I wrote, that was very much just a piece unusually. I thought, you know, I try and take emotion out of it most of the time, but that was actually one of the more emotional pieces I think I've ever written. And the reason I felt like that was just because it to me, the whole situation had a very different feeling to previous managerial changes. I mean, 14 years, I've had 14, 15 managers, goodness knows how many chairmen and board members, players have come and gone, and you just get used to it. And you know, the rather cynical bit of you, it's always the king is dead, long live the king. So that is the football mentality. But with Ronald, you just thought, hang on a minute, here's a guy who set himself up as being a bit different. Not only is he saying he'll honour his contract, but he has a history of doing so. And you tended to believe that here was a guy who was just different, who held probably a lot of the same principles that a lot of supporters do, that can't understand how these contracts are signed and then just allowed to be sort of almost thrown away. And then for him to then leave it in the manner he did. And I've had tons of Everton fans onto me since I wrote that piece, because I've put a line in there about whether or not you believe Saints or Everton are bigger than Saints. And that was just because I know a lot of people are debating the point as to whether it's a forward move or a sideways move. And I don't want to get into it, and to be honest with you, I don't really care either. But the point is that we're talking about a man whose sights were set on Barcelona, who was talked about as possible Arsenal manager. And no matter what way you look at it, Southampton and Everton are not in the same league as those kind of clubs. Had one of those clubs come in for him, I think people would have understood had he said, look, this is a once in a lifetime chance for me. I know I said I'd honour my contract, but I've got to go. But I think, like you said, Bell, as well, anybody who was in, especially that last press conference, the pre-Palace game, when the Everton link actually came up, and saw Ronald and felt how the room felt with his kind of almost laughed at the suggestion.
Yes.
And then to see him a few weeks later holding up an Everton shirt, you think, wow, you start to wonder if it's about money, whether that be personal money or whether it's about money to spend. I don't know. I'm not privy to that, but it just felt like this was like one guy who you could trust, and then when he goes and you can't, does something like that, and you feel like you can't trust him, you think, well, who can you trust?
Yeah, and do you know what's interesting for me is that, you're getting quite emotional talking about it now, and people have said to me, why do you take it personally? Why are you getting angry? Why are you calling him this? Why you go, what? You're just a job, isn't it? But actually, I don't believe that's true. I think when you work with people for a period of time and they maintain a stance with you, forget it's the job. These are people, and we're looking into each other's eyes, talking, doing interviews with him, and he's saying things. And all the way through 2 years, I was thinking, and I say to everybody, you know what? He was such a good player that there's a lovely air of calm about him and authority, and he doesn't need to BS us. He doesn't need to lie. He just seems to need to, says what he wants. He tells us the team news. He says who's injured. He's got and I love that about him. Yeah. And then that became, he didn't care. That became just went. It just disappeared. And instead of it becoming, he was such a good player that he doesn't need to prove himself or feign things as a manager, that actually, at the end, it became, he was such a big name and a big guy that he didn't care ultimately what people thought about him changing his mind, which was a real tragedy of the whole thing for me.
Just how appealing a prospect is this sort of vacancy that Southampton has at the moment?
It's a very, very attractive club. Overdue a cup run, got Europa League group stage to play with, and has been on the cusp of, has now broken into the top 6 and really threatening the top 4, beaten the biggest teams in the land in the last couple of seasons reasonably regularly as well. So there's no doubt that it's a very attractive prospect, and I'd be stunned if Les Reed's inbox wasn't full of letters from managers in work and out of work who want to come here, because it's a very well-run club. It's got an excellent squad of players and some great prospects ahead. It is going to be enormously difficult to continue the progression with the way other clubs have improved with new managers and the money they've spent already in the transfer market, but blimey, there's not many managers who turn it down.
And the infrastructure, the setup, everything you could walk into is top notch. So you're walking into a situation where whoever you are, it's on a plate, and you've got few excuses, and that's why it was always set up like that. You don't have the excuses. So I think for someone with ambition, and maybe, or someone who has been right under the microscope, who fancies working for a really good club that treat everyone and the staff well and whatever, then it's a great opportunity. There are fewer attractive jobs, I think, in European football as this one at the moment.
I think that any manager who came and looked around, you can smell the ambition around this place, can't you? And when you go down to Staplewood especially, and you see those facilities, every time you go, we go down there every week, and every time I'm there, I just always my goodness, when I think back to the old porter cabins, rickety old porter cabins, and the one churned up training pitch, and all that kind of stuff. And I just literally, I think, well, this is just beyond belief.
On the other side of it, I think this will be the toughest season in the Premier League to finish in the top 10. When you look at Pep Guardiola coming in at City, Jose Mourinho at United, Arsenal are always up there and have just spent £30-odd million on a midfielder. Tottenham were in the title race until May. Everton now have a very good manager and money to spend, we know. Leicester, I'd be amazed if they won the title again, but they're not going to drop out of the top 10. You've got West Ham have been given a free stadium, have 50,000 season ticket holders suddenly roaring them on.
Klopp's had a summer. Klopp will have a summer.
Klopp as well. And Chelsea have no European distractions and an excellent manager who can organise things, and again, lots of money to spend. And you start totting up these and you think, blimey, we've got 9 huge teams who have got great resources at their fingertips again. Where can Saints go in that? Now, they're not suddenly going to drop out of the top 10 either, because as we talked about earlier, they've beaten all the big teams, the fear factor's gone, they've got an excellent squad, all the things that go with it, but it is going to be hugely tight in that, obviously both ends of the table. That top 10, I think, is going to be the most competitive we've ever seen.
Well, let's talk about the squad as well. You mentioned it there. Transfer market is unpredictable. It's difficult to assess it at this stage of the summer, I suppose. But what would you guys hope to see, like to see? What do you think the team needs ahead of next season? Adam, start with.
I'd say in terms of if you just looked at the team and you just the regular starting 11, the one weakness for me was in the right back position. Because obviously they paid a bit of money for Cedric. Whether rightly or wrongly, Ronald obviously didn't trust him, because every time they played against anybody who was going to be a real attacking threat out on that wing, he dropped him. And he brought in Kuko, who obviously, in fairness to Kuko, I know he gets a lot of stick from the fans, but I thought he did a great job. For a bloke who they brought in for £1 million, he was not brought in, with all due respect, to play every single week at £1 million. He was like, you're versatile, he'll slot in as and when. It was only because Cedric really didn't work out this season, at least. Might be different next year. But this season, the way they wanted, that they ended up having to play Kuko week in, week out, and then he's getting stick for it, which I thought was really relatively unfair.
Yeah, especially, but you're right, because if things had gone to plan, he'd have been your Thursday night Europa League right back. You know, in those September, October, November matches or whatever. He was a great versatile bargain signing for a squad that needed to add some depth, wasn't it? And I think he, like Romeo, I think second half of the season he was terrific. I mean, I would say he's usurped Cedric and actually probably offers more strength, more defensive ability.
Amazing goals.
The odd one.
Amazing goal.
you only need one of them a season to keep you popular. You know, but so I'm with you on that. And I think I'm surprised he got stick, Kuko, because I thought as the season went on, the last 2 months, I thought he was terrific.
What about someone really exciting at number 10?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I mean, they've tried that, haven't they, as well? I mean, over the years, the number 10 role, I mean, we think of Gaston, obviously Juanmi came in last summer, was potentially going to do it. We've seen various people, sort of, even Tadic, when he first came in, was earmarked for number 10, and it didn't quite work out, so it's not the role he's playing now, albeit he's still doing very well, in my opinion. That is potentially something, but I guess it also depends who the new manager is and what formation, what their vision is. We're talking about players as we see it slotting into Koeman's team, but the new manager might have a different vision for how he wants to set them up.
Obviously, you talk about signings, potential incomings, but how important has this sort of philosophy of the club in the last few months to be able to get some of their key players tied down to new long-term contracts? I think Fraser Forster, Virgil van Dijk, Stephen Davis recently, James Price. Just how important has that been?
Well, I guess I have two slightly contrary views on this, and the first is that I think that when all of this conversation comes back to the fact that I think that we probably all agree that actually the club is being run in a way that we would all commend, that actually from Ralph, Gareth, Les, Martin, actually the philosophy I think is something that we all applaud, and we think that they're generally doing a really good job. And when we're talking about the manager having a great squad to inherit, a lot of that is down to them and not just the individual managers that have been in charge, and they deserve a lot of praise for that. And I also think they deserve a lot of praise for getting these long contracts. The only thing I would say about the contracts is that even though I think they're great for Southampton FC, the company, the business, because it is protecting your asset, actually I think that, well, I mean no disrespect to any individual player, but I don't think they mean anything to the players. If you're not within the last 18 months of your contract, then committing long term, well, I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to give you an absolutely colossal pay rise, but you know that in 12 months, 18 months time, if you want to leave and somebody's prepared to pay the money for you, that you can go anyway, because that's just the way that football is. But it is valuable for the club to tie down these people to these contracts. But I think that really the crucial point is, are they signing these contracts in the last 18 months? Because that is a real commitment to the future. Whereas when you've got 3 or 4 years left and you sign for another couple, I mean, I don't know. I think it's brilliant business for the club, but I don't know how significant it is.
It boosts the fans as well, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's good. It's a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing at all.
You're just a big cynic these days.
Adam's right. It does protect the asset ultimately. And again, we talk about the business plan philosophy. It's all part of that. If they're going to go for big money. They're not going to go on the cheap. So, but ultimately, I think it helps the squad. I think it gives stability to the squad. I think it gives stability to fans. I think fans see the club acting to protect, and I think that's important from the supporters' point of view. I think there's nothing more galling for fans than players running contracts down and disappearing for nothing. I think that really irks people. So I think it is good. I think it sends a good message about the club as well to other clubs, as in, you know, and they've shown, I've liked the last couple of years when we've had the Schneiderlin, say, Wanyama situations where the club have actually held firm and said, well, right, you're going to go, but it isn't till next year. It isn't till we're happy with the money. And I think that's good, and that gets overlooked when people moan about Ronald going and whatever. Ultimately, there is nothing you can do sometimes if people want to engineer a move, whether it's a player or not. But to get Van Dijk on a new deal, and he just joined the club, I thought was making a point about this summer to every other club. You know, we know he's good, we know he's done well, and by the way, kick your hands off. I mean, I think it's a bit like that, but is it actually, like you said, Adam, is that a bad thing if in 2 years' time or a year's time he goes for £40 million to another club because he goes to a big club and everyone goes, fair enough, it's whoever.
Contracts maximise their value,
yeah.
Ultimately, as an asset of the business, it maximises their value. Yeah. If they've still got 4 or 5 years, there's no way they can run it down realistically because their value will probably drop in that period anyway.
So really, I think the contracts are important.
It makes a lot of sense for Saints to get these guys, the really good guys, tied down for as long as they're prepared to sign for, as long as they're of a good age.
Players also have remarkably fragile confidence and mentalities about them, and being made to feel so wanted can only be a good thing as well. And
And I also think, by the way, I mean, we talk about, you're right, the right age ones and so on. The Stephen Davis one I loved. The Stephen Davis, 31 years old, didn't need to give him a 3-year contract to 34, I would have said. Didn't need to, but they did. And I thought the club's behaviour in the way they've done that and the reasons they've done that all sit well with me. His loyalty, his effort, his attitude, he's affecting the changing room, his professionalism. It's a reward for as much for what he's done as for what he might do in the next 3 years. And I think he is probably the biggest unsung hero of the whole squad. And you know, I just thought that one to me was why if you were a player, you'd be happy at Southampton. Look at Stephen Davis's new contract. That's what that told me.
I agree with that, and also on Stephen Davis's impact as well. I mean, you know, you've heard me bleat on about him for years. He's been one of my favourite players since.
Well, we both had to defend him against fans and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, he's just been. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. And the weird thing is that actually, even though he's not what you would call a natural number 10, he's probably been the most effective player they've had in that number 10 role as well, actually, because he's a lot more creative than people think, and also his sheer effort, his work rate, his pressing, his ability to track back as well. I mean, he's been brilliant. I was, of all the contracts, I completely agree with Adam. I was genuinely the happiest to see that, because I think it was so well merited and well deserved, and I agree that totally it sends a really positive message to the rest of the squad that if you work hard and you know you really just get your head down and get about your business and do really well, that we will reward you. We will recognise it and we will reward you.
It smacked of a good employer.
Yeah.
Here we've done the right thing for the right person for the right reasons, and I like that. And with regards to the long-term contracts, you know, and Van Dijk and Cedric and players like that, and all this comes back to the ambition and the future. But, you know, Van Dijk didn't need to come to Southampton. Cedric didn't need to come to Southampton. Cedric could have gone to Stoke for more money. Van Dijk could have gone to a bigger club. He held out on Celtic to come here. The reason he did that was because he knew this was a club where he could perform, shine, and a platform. Now, whilst you might want him to stay for 6 years, like the manager, whatever, ultimately, this club sends, you know, the messages are good. You know, there was a reason Van Dijk did that, and it's working for him already, because after one season, his stock has risen. You know, and Saints can punch above their weight in that regard, because they can say to players, look at the evidence, you could come there, or you could come here. Well, we're telling you, in 3 years' time, you'll be higher up than you are now. That's not guaranteed at that club.
Oh, I think a natural turnover of players is actually a healthy thing for a football club, even if it sometimes feels painful when your better players leave. I think it is actually a healthy thing. I just think when we're talking about the longevity, the turnover of managers is less healthy than the turnover of players.
I just want to touch on two final things briefly before we finish. The first is the Europa League. Obviously, last season ended in a big night of disappointment in Midtjylland that a lot of us shared in. This season, of course, Southampton don't have to worry about the qualifying stages and are straight through to the group stages. How exciting a prospect is that for this season for a club like Southampton? And I know it's difficult to predict at this point, but how well do you think they could potentially do in this competition?
Well, I'm with Belvers, as you're looking at me first. I would rather finish 11th and get to the semi-finals or final of the Europa League, and the same with the other domestic cups, than finish 6th or 7th in the Premier League and not have a run. I think you can't guarantee shots at glory like they're going to have a chance of this season. I mean, as far as the competition goes, why not have a chance? I don't like the way they drop back out of the Champions League into it. I think that sort of tarnishes the brand of the Europa League a bit. But for what it's worth, I think it'd be fantastic. Fans love it. We had, for all the disaster that Midtjylland was, we enjoyed the trips away as much as the fans did. It's something different, you know. It's off the hamster wheel a little bit, isn't it? And you find out new things. You have to do different research and find stuff. The bars in Europe tend to be excellent. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Why wouldn't we be looking forward to it? For all sorts of cultural and sporting reasons. There are lots of reasons to look forward to it.
It did have a real sort of sense of occasion, didn't it? Even the qualifying stages last year.
It was brilliant. It was great. It was just something so different. You get so used to the way that the Premier League is, and it is, like Adam said, it is a hamster wheel. Perhaps we feel that more than supporters, because you kind of get into this sort of, you have the things that you do every day of the week. So your press conference, then you do this, then you go to the game, and then you do this the next day, then you do, and you do feel like you're continually just doing the same thing over and over again for 9 months, more or less. And actually, this was something completely different. We all went away. I can speak from experience that we all had a very nice time as well, as working hard and covering the games. And it was hard because you've got like the fans. I mean, even worse for them. They've got to go back to proper jobs, and having done all that travel, and then you're off to an away game on the Sunday and things like that, and it is tiring, but it is a great experience. It's a great cultural experience. You get to go to places that you wouldn't normally go, and I think we all met some fantastic people connected with the other clubs that they played. Both clubs, we met some fantastic people, and we made some nice friendships out of that. But I think more importantly for the football club, it's one of those things that we talk about as a sign of progression, and it is a marker along the way to have qualified for the Europa League group stages now, having gone into the qualification the year before. That is obviously another clear sign of progress, and absolutely I couldn't agree more heartily with Belvers and with Adam on that I'd love to see Southampton have a really good cup run. I think for me that is more important than the league at some point, and the FA Cup celebrations, as wonderful as they were, the 40th anniversary celebrations this year, really hit it home to me in that we were rightly celebrating this great event. It was a momentous day, not just for the football club, but for the whole city, because that's what a great football team, a great cup run brings. It brings to the whole city, the whole area is energised and invigorated by it. All the businesses are boosted by things like that. But actually, it highlighted to me that, in a way, we were also commiserating 40 years of failure, because a club of this size, who has spent so much of that time in the top flight, should not have gone 40 years without winning another major trophy. And it is about time. It is about time. Even, I always look back as well with a tinge of regret from the club's point of view that the League One season, even that when they got promoted was a little bit of a failure as well, because there's no way that squad should not have won that title, and that would have at least been another bit of silverware that year. Less so the championship, because that was just an amazing achievement to go straight through it. But I just think it's about time. This place is ready for something like that. And if I was having my pick next year, if you could just pick, and you said, they could finish 6th or 7th again, but not really do anything in the cups, or they could finish 10th and 11th and win something, well, hands down 10th or 11th and win something. And I think that the very, very, very vast majority of fans would agree, because even the generations, younger generations of supporters, or slightly younger, they still harp they still harp back to 2003, the losing FA Cup final, their experience of going to the semi-final, their experience in Cardiff at the final, and those are the real memories that stick with people. And it's like speaking to Laurie as well. What was a bigger achievement, winning the cup in '76 or finishing second just behind Liverpool in the league? Well, finishing second just behind Liverpool in the league was an unbelievable achievement. Better than a one-off cup run. Yes. And yet, where's the open-top bus parade for the guys that finished second? Who can even name the team that finished second? Well, 76, everybody knows where they were. All these stories that we heard this year. It means so much to a city and not just a football club. And as you can tell, I'm really I would love a good cup run.
And I always remember, I've said it on the radio, but Sam Allardyce always said, players and managers want to win things. You know, to have your ambition being finish 7th in the Premier League is no way to go through your whole career. You know, you want things to take out of your career that are moments that you treasure, trophies, medals, whatever you can get. But I think Europa League is really exciting. I can't believe you don't think the JPT was major silverware, but I can't. I think the Europa League is the one that excites. I think they've had a couple of bashes at the League Cup, and we've had some disastrous couple of nights on the way. But you know, some decent runs. FA Cup's been very disappointing. But the Europa League, I just look at Sevilla and how they've changed their standing in the last 2 or 3 seasons. Yeah. They know they're never going to win La Liga, for goodness sake, for instance. You know, they're not going to finish in the top 3 or 4 most seasons, and a smaller league. But look at the way they've attacked that competition. To win it 3 years in a row is remarkable. Can Southampton aim to do something like Sevilla have done? And I think, why not?
There's going to be another new experience involved this year as well, being in the group stage. It's not just going to be little short trips to Europe. You're going to get FC Siberia and all these things that the club but all the things that the club haven't experienced before. Yes. There was a lot last season about how Southampton always lose after an international break because they've never really before had 20 players disappear for a fortnight and then come back with so little time to prepare for the next game. This again is just going to be another learning experience. There is a Norwegian team called Odd. I'd love them to draw them. That just screams headlines and all sorts, but you want a trip away to Azerbaijan or somewhere exotic that you wouldn't travel to normally, and it just gives you the experience again as players, as fans, as a club, and everything, so that you know next time that happens, you know what to expect.
Well, we'll remember that at the airport on the way to Azerbaijan.
Hey, last year's draw, had they made it, would have been brilliant. Last year's draw was what you're on about. You could have, you know, if they'd have got through Midtjylland, would have been Legia Warsaw, Napoli and Bruges. I mean, it would have been, that's what you want. Yeah. Those were 3 teams you went, oh, what have we missed out on? They would have been all brilliant trips. Yeah. And the other thing I remember from it, by the way, which fans should take into consideration as the season goes on, is that it is different and it is tiring. And just watching and travelling and being observers, it was very tiring. It was different to a bog standard week. So when everyone says, why can't you play after, it isn't just a normal preparation for a game. It really does take it out of you, that travelling and all that goes with it, the extra everything, I think is difficult to manage. So it's going to be fascinating from that point of view.
It's mentally, well, I think for the players, it's people always have a go at why can't they play, you know, X number of games. I actually think it's more about mental fatigue rather than a physical fatigue. There's no excuse that they shouldn't be, they're professional athletes, they shouldn't be fit enough, but actually mentally it can be tiring, it can be draining. Just
if you're returning at 4 o'clock in the morning on Friday and then you're playing on Sunday at 1 o'clock, you know, how do you recover, rest, train, prepare?
And it's different to a Wednesday night home league match and a Saturday afternoon home league match. It's very, very different. Everyone goes, oh, it's still twice a week. It's just a whole that thing in the middle of the night. You're right, the travelling takes it out of your legs. You know that from all your athletic efforts. It is a different managing of the body and the mind, isn't it? And I think it takes some adjusting. But what a period of growth it's going to be for some of the players and the experience you said they'll get, and how, you know, in a year or two's time we might go, now they really benefited as individuals from that European campaign.
I love the fact that the club, quite rightly, have embraced it. This is our next step. We want to embrace the Europa League, we want to enjoy it, whereas other clubs who have got in it for the first time and only time have then said, oh no, we can't risk our proper players with that. We'll play the kids. And then you're like, what are you doing?
Well, while we're on the subject of fixtures, if you like, let's just very, very quickly finish up by touching on the fixture list that came out last week. Obviously, at home on the first day of the season against Watford.
2 new managers.
Home on the last day of the season against Stoke. What did you make of that sort of start and finish for Southampton?
Difficult couple of away games to start with, isn't it? Manchester United and Arsenal. I like the fact, I don't think you could have picked a better Christmas period with a short trip away to Bournemouth and 2 home games. And there were a couple of clusters of difficult runs of games, but there always are going to be. Like we said earlier, you know, you've got at least 10 very tricky teams this season, so you're not going to have an easy run. I think it's been largely pretty kind, really.
What did you make of it, Adam? I know it's kind of difficult to assess.
I think if I was the new manager, I'd be pretty happy, because I think the most significant thing for anybody, and it's a new manager or a new signing, is in the early days how you do at home is really, really important, because obviously that's where most of your fans see you. That's where most people start to draw their early conclusions of whether they like you or not. And actually, their early home run looks good. It looks kind. Away from home, oh my goodness me, it's difficult. It is really, really difficult.
November.
Yeah, so
it's
first like
ridiculous, isn't it?
first five games against the other teams
Leicester,
in
Man
the top
City,
7, top 8.
Arsenal, Man United.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that is really hard. But I think if I would rather that than have the reverse and have all those teams at home and then have the easier away games, because if you lose a few at home early on, you can imagine people getting a bit restless, questioning the new manager. So I think overall, I would be pretty pleased with the way that the fixtures have fallen if I was the new manager.
The away games early on are all coming up against teams who've got new managers and, you know, again, have gone through
and you
a
can catch
transition.
them cold.
So, yeah.
You can catch them cold as well. I mean, we didn't realise how many teams at the point that the Saints beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge were going to go and beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, especially in the first half of the season. But that was still a really significant moment and a real moment of belief for the entire squad. And actually, that is a slight advantage with playing those teams early on.
And the Euros will have an impact on everybody. I mean, obviously Southampton have got 7 players out there, not all playing every game, but of course the pre-season becomes trickier to manage, I think, to get everyone to be at the same level at the same time at the start of the season. So the good home games first is absolutely huge, as Adam says. But other clubs, those big clubs, may have 15 players coming back from Euros or Copa America or whatever, and actually they catching them cold has a possibility. And Saints have shown in the last couple of years they don't need to be scared going to some of these grounds either. So, I mean, for me, the most significant one was the Spurs away one last season. It almost felt like they'd gone to a different level away from home by getting over the line there the way they did. So I think the start of the season is good. I mean, it's not exciting, is it, on paper? Let's be honest. Watford at home. It's not a razzmatazz start, but it gives a new man a chance.
Saturday at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, thank goodness. One of the only Saturday 3 o'clock games we get.
Yeah, we'll enjoy that.
You know, we'll enjoy it. And then, of course, we finished at home to Stoke before Michael Owen's last game, and you know, a 1-1 draw there. So you think of the start and the end, fine, but the Christmas is an absolute joy. Belvers, I'm glad you brought that up. And I was looking at the fixtures for both our Premier League clubs on the coast with Bournemouth, and they've got to go to Swansea on New Year's Eve. I mean, that's you know, and they've got it away on Boxing Day. So if you were Saints fans, you'd be looking at that going, we've done all right. 2 home matches, Bournemouth before Christmas, and then a trip to Everton to start the new year, which they'll look forward to anyway.
Really? What's that?
It's a shame the home game's not until
they want to see Morales play.
I think that's an excellent note to leave it on. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in. Real pleasure to hear all your thoughts on all those various topics. Thank you to everybody at home as well for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Be sure to subscribe to Southampton's official YouTube channel for more exclusive content over the summer. Also check out saintsfc.co.uk and our social channels. And thank you very much for joining us.